A 17-year-old transgender high school student. He's a wrestler, and it's his sport along with his gender identity that has made his journey a national story. Texas is one of a handful of states which prohibits boys wrestling against girls in high school, but the state also requires wrestlers to compete against the gender of their birth. So Mac Beggs wrestles against girls while taking testosterone in his transition, and that fact has been criticized as an unfair advantage. Saturday, Beggs won a state girls championship.
If you had your way, would you wrestle boys or girls?
Boys. Definitely
Why?
boys. Because I'm a guy. Just makes more sense.
Did you hear the boos?
Yeah.
You did hear them? What do you think people were booing about?
Because I'm taking testosterone and I'm winning. I mean, I've been winning before when I didn't have testosterone, but now that, you know, I'm actually winning, people want to go crazy. You just automatically just want to call me a cheater. Like, that kind of makes me feel like they don't care about my training or the work that I put in.
Are you taking the amount of testosterone that you want to be taking, or are you holding back because of wrestling?
I'm holding back because of wrestling. I want to be at a fair, competitive edge with all these girls because I know that they want to pursue wrestling careers, and I want to pursue a wrestling career, but I also want to do it fairly. I don't want to cheat. That's not something that I do. I told my doctor that put me give me enough testosterone to where I'm happy with it and I could see changes, but also to where it's under the 6-to-1 ratio under the steroid list for testosterone, because testosterone's on there for the steroid list, and it's 6-to-1. And so she gave me the lowest dose possible.
You're on the lowest dose?
Yeah.
Not everybody's been comfortable wrestling you. You did run into a couple forfeits.
That's something I want to address. Those girls didn't want to forfeit. I talked to them right afterwards. They didn't want to forfeit. Their parents made them forfeit.
To a national controversy.
Lawsuit against the University Interscholastic League to prevent Beggs from going to the mat with girls.
It's not the student's problem. It's UIL's problem.
The question is, if he's taking testosterone, doesn't that mean that he's taking a performance-enhancing drug that would disqualify him from competing? Not necessarily. So under the rules in the state, if a doctor has prescribed anything, steroids or testosterone to a student because of a medical condition, well, then it's okay. It's not considered a performance-enhancing drug. Now, the story gets really tricky because even though he wants to compete against other males, and he's not allowed to do so, there's now a parent who is suing to basically bar him from competing, period.
Mac's mother, Angela, who declined to talk with us on camera, says he'd prefer to compete as a boy, but current UIL rules prevent that.
Mac, in a way, does have an unfair advantage because this testosterone will make him stronger. But because of the UIL rules, they will not allow Mac to wrestle with the boys. So really, it's the UIL's responsibility to let these children do whatever sport they choose to do.
Coppell attorney Jim Bowden spoke with us by phone. He says he knows Mac Beggs personally, but filed a lawsuit on behalf of a female wrestler who has competed against Beggs.
This is a great kid. This is not fueled by hatred.
The lawsuit reads in part, somewhere in the process of reviewing this case and looking at the trees, the folks at the UIL missed the forest. They failed to see the impropriety and outright insanity of allowing a girl who is taking a banned anabolic steroid to still compete. According to the lawsuit, it appears that the UIL is failing to simply look at the facts. A female athlete is taking male hormones to become a boy, yet is still being allowed to compete against girls. UIL policy states a student's participation is based on the gender on their birth certificate. And while steroid use is against state law and UIL rules, a spokesperson says there's an exception if it's prescribed by a doctor for a medical purpose, which applies to Beggs.
At least if Mac wants to compete against the boys, she's doing it knowingly and willingly. The other girls in the bracket against Mac don't have that choice. You know, they show up to the girls' competition, and there is somebody who's not really a girl, not really a boy yet, but is closer to the boys than the girls.
Because it turns out that girls on steroids are able to outcompete other girls. And this has been a problem ever since the East Germans used to drug up their women for swimming, and then they'd win all the medals, and then it would come out later that they were all drugged up. This has been a problem for a long time.
Many now are questioning if the competition was fair, by the way, on both sides, because the transgender advocates say he should be wrestling against boys like he wants to. This, of course, is a window into a larger political battle.
But that doesn't change the fact that your sex is your sex, and your sex is chromosomally determined. It is biologically determined.
Novel concept.
Chris,
we have the Fourth Circuit. The Fourth Circuit just said what I'm saying.
All right, and guess what? Sometimes you have judges that are incorrect.
The Department of Education has said it. The Department of Justice has said it.
The majority of Americans,
courts across the country have
say
said
that they
it.
think the majority of Americans, the majority of parents who've spoken out on this issue, and if you look at the actual data behind the polls that have been done on this, they say they don't think it's a crazy idea to have girls wrestle with girls, boys wrestle with boys, and if you're taking testosterone, that is called cheating. I think take the transgendered issue out of it for a second. If you are taking testosterone, which is a performance-enhancing drug in sports, you shouldn't be able to wrestle. You're not a real champion. You cheated and you won. Now, the state has, I do think, some blame for this by having it where they're even allowing these testosterone to be used if they are prescribed by a doctor. That's where I think the big fix probably needs to come.
The irony is that if there were acceptance, we wouldn't have had this issue because this kid would be wrestling against boys. The issue is acceptance. If this state allowed this kid to wrestle against boys, which is what he wants, we wouldn't be talking about this case right now.
Do it, but to say that we should change the entire way that sports is done because of one person and their decision to do something, that is unrealistic.
So, in my opinion,
you lose the right to compete if you're taking testosterone.
I think you have to have a standard.
See, but
because it's a woman.
I know what's going on.
It's a woman
here.
taking testosterone.
It's not her. She
no, it's not her fault. She
yeah.
wants to compete with the boys, but the only way he can wrestle is with the girls.
Yep.
It's more of a flaw in the system than you can be as mad as you want at him, but he's like, "Fuck, man! If I want to wrestle, this is all I can do."
Unfortunately, if this is something you want to do, if you want to be transgender, and by the way, I have at 17 years old, I really think we should be waiting a little while. I'm sure that she feels, but our brains aren't fully developed. We don't know.
So, at least wait to I think 25.
There you go. I agree with you. Or 21, but
even 20. Think about when you're 21.
Yeah, but this gender mania, you have a whole support system now where the kid's 14 and feels like a
right,
girl.
if that's what you feel like.
let's encourage her to do that. So
such an easy
it doesn't
solution.
mean that you can wrestle if you choose to take testosterone.
No, but she should be with the boys. She should 100% be able to wrestle with the boys.
Yeah. Here's the other.
That's
problem.
how you solve it.
But here's the problem with that. So the state has a policy which is to say that it must match. Your gender on your birth certificate has to match the sport you play, because you can do the reverse now, right?
Yeah, but how long ago did they make those rules?
If you're going to separate gender from sex, and you're just going to say that what gender is however you feel in your head, then there aren't two genders, right? There's no transgenders. There's not two genders. There's not 50 genders, as Facebook would have you believe. There are infinite numbers of genders, right? Because I am ben-gendered. Right? In my head, my gender is exactly what I say it is. And in your head, you have the number of genders that you say you have. The fact is that if you want to make gender so specific that it's just what's going on in your mind, then why box it into a various series of categories? Why not instead just say that you are, Bob gendered or military or Millie gendered, right? You have your own gender. The problem is once you separate off biology and gender, then you end up in this la-la land where basically we just say, okay, fine, we'll treat you as individuals with regard to your quote-unquote gender, but your sex is still the governing body. And that's the problem the left can't deal with. So instead what they try to do is they try to create this tenuous linkage between sex and gender, even though gender is basically a made-up term. Sex is sex, end of story. They've tried to basically say that you can have a female brain in a male body. There's no evidence of that.
So look, how would I? Then I thought, okay, always think like, what shoe on the other foot? What would I do? I've got a daughter. If she's in a wrestling situation, and then this is the thing, I'd pull her aside and be like, okay, he's, they won't let him compete in the men's side. He is taking testosterone. So you drew the short straw today. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck. That's it. Go get him, Tiger.
Do your best.
Who cares?
Do your best.
Do your best. And by the way, you don't necessarily draw the short straw. Just because he's taking testosterone doesn't mean he's definitely going to win, right? And now he has a little bit of an advantage, and you can overcome that advantage, and that's life. Let's move on. Let's compete.